My name is Kayla Blackman, and this is my discussion board presentation on evidence-based practice. Before the readings in this course about evidence-based practice, my conception of it was that it was a process that began with a problem or question, which then required the clinician to find many research articles, read all of these articles, and puzzle piece the information in the articles to answer the question or the problem at hand. I know that evidence-based practice is very important in guiding our clinical practice and that we should be using relevant and up-to-date research and evidence to guide our practice. I also was under the impression that using evidence-based practice can be time-consuming and required many hours of reviewing articles and finding the best information. I also felt that it was difficult to implement into practice because, again, it required lots of time to find the articles and review the articles, and then required problem solving to then implement what we read into what we do every day. And I initially just felt a little bit intimidated on where to start and how to move forward in using it in practice. After reading the course readings and materials, my current conception of evidence-based practice is that it is a systematic process to use evidence-based research to answer a clinical question, and client preferences and clinical expertise are considered. The answer to the question should then guide clinical practice going forward. And I learned about the 5 A's process. That is a framework and a guide for how to use evidence-based practice, beginning with asking the clinical question and ending with applying the answers found in the appraised research, and then analyzing and adjusting practice based on those answers that we implemented. My definition of evidence-based practice is that it is a systematic process used by clinicians in consideration of client preferences and clinical expertise that includes asking a focused question, gathering research and evidence to support potential answers, appraising the research and evidence, applying the best answer in practice, and reflecting on and adjusting practice as necessary to best meet the needs of the client. In the readings, the authors examined several misconceptions or myths about evidence-based practice and using it in clinical practice. And some of these include that it is impossible to put into practice and that researchers are out of touch with how these answers can be implemented in practice. And we know now that practicing the process and using the 5 A's lays out a guide for how we can use some of these researched methods in our practice, and that it takes practice using the process in order to seamlessly start from a question and end at an implemented idea or program or methodology, and then finally analyzing and adjusting what we've implemented to best meet the needs of the client. Another misconception is that it is a cookie cutter practice and that it ignores established clinical skills, but we know that it is client-centered and that the client preferences and clinical expertise are taken into account. Another misconception is that it is time-consuming and that there's no time to review, and we know that little time is needed once we've practiced the process. What can be done about some of these myths and misconceptions is that we can practice writing focused questions that can be answered in research. We can practice appraising articles and using the knowledge to inform our work and develop a plan to implement these answers. And finally, we can share knowledge with our peers. We can develop resources to encourage others to use evidence-based practice in their work.